Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Gajananam Bhutaganadi Sevitam Kapita Jamboopalasara Bhakshitam Umasutam Shoka Vinashakaranam Namami Vigneshwara Pada Pankajam. Team Param Vedanta extends a warm welcome for the 30th session of DISHA. In today's class, Sri Ullas will give an introduction to the knowledge of God and the glory of that knowledge covered in the first 3 verses of chapter 7. He will also explain topic of creation, discussing aspects of manifest and unmanifest creation and differences between Maya and Brahman as covered in Tattvabodha. Our revered teacher, Dr. Timmappa Hegde sir, will introduce us to today's topic and later conclude today's presentations with his valuable insights. The teaching quiz today will be presented by Srimati Indumati. Before we begin today's presentation, we have our usual shloka time. Over to you, Pannaga.
Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Today we shall learn the deeper meaning of a very simple and popular shloka that is chanted before going to sleep every night. Ramaskandam Hanumantam Vainateyam Vrukodaram Shayane Yasmare Nityam Duswapnam Tasya Nashyati. In the next slide, we shall see the word-to-word meaning of this shloka. Rama, who is the ideal Manava, who is both Nara and Narayana. Skanda, that is Subramanya, the valorous general of the gods. Hanumanta, the epitome of bhakti, courage and surrender. Vainateya, that is the son of Vinuta, popularly known as Garuda, who is the pinnacle of physical power. And finally, Vrikodara Bhima, the one who had the strength of 10,000 elephants. Shayane Yasmare Nityam, he who remembers these gods at the time of going to sleep, Shayane, Duswapnam Tasya Nashyati, his bad dreams get destroyed. Now, what are the benefits of chanting this shloka just before going to sleep? Firstly, it invokes bhakti, quietening our mind, which has been very active throughout the day with a million thoughts buzzing past. Secondly, the infinite strength of all these gods should remind us of our own infinity, the Vedantic knowledge that we are not this limited body, but the limitless Atma, eternal and joyful, unaffected by anything that has happened to us during the day. And finally, praying to these gods just before we sleep acts as an auto-suggestion to the mind, sinking into our subconscious, ensuring peaceful sleep and a calm state of mind when we wake up the next day, ready to face another day in this turbulent world. Thank you. Hari Om.
Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. A sincere gratefulness for all our acharyas who have put us in the path of Jnana Yoga. Next slide, please. When today we are in DISHA, we have entered into the 7th chapter. Whenever there is a transition from one shatkam to another, Swamiji always emphasizes the important topics that are covered in each shatkam, which will be covered by our main speaker today, Ullas. Ullas is going to tell us about this transition and what are the topics that we cover in the first shatkam and the next shatkam. But as students of Advaita Vedanta, we know we are studying the Bhagavad Gita again. Each time we study the Bhagavad Gita, we should be able to extract something. And this time our objective is, what is that I can learn from the Gita, which will give me inner strength to be able to handle all the difficulties in my life. Second is to be able to discover Purnatvam, to be able to discover happiness within myself, which means when all the good things in the world are there, I'm happy. When everything perhaps is taken away from me, I continue to be what I am, and with that objective. How do we study the Bhagavad Gita now from the 7th Shatkam onwards? Let our focus be a deeper understanding of who this Jiva is. Who am I? I see the world around me, which is called Jagat. And from this chapter onwards, Krishna will start introducing the topic of svarūpa īśvara darshana, and the way I see the world becomes different. In this chapter itself, Krishna, without any question from Arjuna, that means after going through a certain preparation of the first 6 chapters, Krishna intuitively answers a potential question from all seekers. Can I know more about God? And Krishna now declares his truer nature, his higher nature, which we will see from today's class as para prakriti and apara prakriti. We all know that there is so much of difficulty in the world, and we know the reason why we are studying Advaita Vedanta is, can I have moksha or freedom, not necessarily posthumously, but I want it while I am alive, while I am in this limited body which is subject to a lot of problems, while I am functioning through a mind which has its own idiosyncrasies and so on. Can I work with this instrument with a lot of defects, but can I experience a level of peace, security, and happiness which is not going to be ruffled by any of the storms that are going in the external world? What are the sadhana that I need to go through? And that are the 6 things I need to pick up more clearly as I'm studying the Bhagavad Gita. In this particular chapter, that is the 7th chapter, Krishna introduces 4 types of bhaktas, which Swamiji says are 4 levels of bhaktas: Artha, Artharthi, Jignasu, and Jnani. Now, they can be classified into 2 big steps. Artha and Artharthi bhaktas are those who see God only when there is distress or when there is an important project where I want to accomplish something. So in these moments, God becomes important. That is an Artha and Artharthi. And these can be classified as where God is the means and all the good things in the world are a goal. But through maturity of the first 6 chapters, and as Krishna begins to introduce himself more in this chapter, there is a shift in the seeker now, thanks to our Guru, the way our Guru unfolds the Shastras. We now become students of the Bhagavad Gita, not to get all the good things in the world, but to make use of all the bad things in the world to discover God. Can you see a big jump? Initially, I was Artha Artharthi. That means God was the means and all the good things in the world was a goal. From now on, there is a big jump. God is the goal. And all the difficulties that I go through in my life, every difficulty becomes an opportunity for me to know more about God. That means I become a Jignasu. I want to know about God. And finally, my aim is to know God. And knowing God is, in our school, being God. Knowing God is being God. There was a certain psychologist, we can go to the next slide, called Winnicott. Winnicott did a lot of experiments with small children, and he was a psychologist. For many years, he studied small children. Can we go back to the previous slide, where he made one important observation, and you would see this in our own families with little children when they're about 1 year or 2 years of age. They develop a very special attachment to one particular toy. It could be a teddy bear, a doll, a blanket, something very special to the child. There are hundreds of toys a child may have, but this particular toy is very special. The child will cuddle, hold on to it, speak to it. So the teddy bear is now very special. And sometimes parents know how important it is if they are traveling. This teddy bear or this blanket has to be packed, because if they are somewhere Without this blanket or teddy bear, they are in serious trouble because the child is very upset. Nothing else can replace. You can give a better blanket, better toy. Whatever you give the child cannot be consoled because, and Winnicott calls it transitory. It is not subjective because there is a certain amount of subjectivity. It is not fully objective. Objective means the doll outside is objective. The thoughts within me are subjective. Because a child has imposed something very special, he calls transitory, which is beyond subjective, beyond objective. Now, I put this for a very specific reason. At this stage of our understanding, thanks to our Guru and Shastras, we are able to see God in a different way. If not for this intervention, what would have happened is our understanding of God continues to remain a childish understanding. Next, and the next slide. The child might have grown older, but even the older child refuses to let go of that teddy bear, that toy. And what is that teddy bear? Our notion of God. Now, it is very difficult to accept this, and some of you may be very upset also, but I want you to see my notions of God, is it still childish? Am I ready now to take the next step? And that is what Krishna is helping us to do in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita without any question from Arjuna. Next slide, please. If we have to go, sometimes we are going on the street and suddenly you see your form of God. Suddenly a devotion comes. Now, if that form of God is special to you, then you have a very special association. You may see other versions of God. They do not appeal to you. Why? It is not my teddy bear. Forgive me for using that word. But next slide, please. If we have to graduate into a deeper understanding of the Bhagavad Gita, which is extremely hard for ardent bhaktas, we have to be like the pole vaulter. The Guru will tell us that this understanding has brought a certain amount of punya, has brought us a Guru in our life. The Guru introduces our Shastras and now tells us from the 7th chapter onwards, you will have to see me, the same Shri Krishna, a little differently. And for that, you should be willing to let go of the bar that has brought you to this top. Are we willing? Now, I know this transition will take time, does not matter. But if you have to really grow from Artha Artharthi to Jignasu, we have to use the same pole vault. But if we have to cross the bar to become Jignasu or Jnani, we have to learn to gracefully let go our primitive and childhood understandings of Ekarupa. Not that I don't want us to give up. You will see the greatest of Advaita Bhaktas will still be ardent Bhaktas, but then your understanding is going to be very different. So depending upon the maturity and the intellectual caliber, our teachers give us various levels of God. Initially, for years, we require Ekarupa. And then suddenly the teacher will introduce us to Aneka Rupa or Vishwarupa. And finally, as we are from 6th to the 12th chapters, through deeper and deeper levels of bhakti, and when the trust in the teacher becomes more, which starts from the 7th chapter itself. In the 7th chapter itself, Krishna will talk about para and apara, and that para is actually arupa. Next one, please. One of the best definitions of Vishwarupa Ishvara is this opening verse from the Ishavasya Upanishad, which goes like this: Ishavasyam idam sarvam, yat kinchit jagatyam jagat. Even the smallest entity available is none other than Isha, none other than Bhagavan. Meditate on this line 100 times. Everything is none other than God. Or if you want to use something else, you use the word godliness. And therefore, I develop a reverence to the chair I'm seated, to the computer I touch, to my telephone, to any book that I have, to the floor on which this chair is seated. Everything I treat with reverence. Why? Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam. The next line is important. Tena tyaktena bunjitaha magradaha kasyasvidhanam. All the wealth of the world, which I have so far acquired because of this body and mind, I understand none of them belong to me. Everything is God, everything belongs to Bhagwan, and therefore I develop a sense of detachment to all that is anatma, my body, my mind, my possessions, my profession, and my family. And this is what we learn when we enter into Svarūpa īśvara darshan. So our whole shift is from God dependence now to world dependence, and finally we come to self-dependence. Next one, please. We have seen this before. With this background, let us listen to what Ullas speaks. And Ullas will not only cover the key first 3 words of the 7th chapter, he will touch on related topics from Tattva Bodha. Over to you, Ullas.
Thank you, sir. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. As sir said, we are in DISHA, which is a recap of what we have learned so far. And first we are going to cover about the 7th chapter, which is the beginning of a new Shatakam. And then we'll also look at some of the topics from Tattva Bodha. So before we start the 7th chapter revision, let's also look at the overall picture, what is being presented in Gita itself. Swamiji, as sir said, always presents what is the overall structure of Gita is. There are 18 chapters, which is divided into 3 Shatakams. Each Shatakam means 6 chapters. And the first one is called Prathama Shatakam, then Madhyam and Charam. In the Prathama Shatakam, that is chapter 1 to 6, we looked at the Jiva svarūpa, the Karma Yoga, and the importance of self-effort, prayatna. Then in the Madhyama Shatakam, we would see, analogous to the Prathama Shatakam, Ishvara Swarupam, Upasana Yoga, and Ishvara Anugraha, the grace of the Lord. And in the Charama Shatakam, which is very exciting, we would also see what is the combination of these two, how they are both the same. Now, before we do that, let us understand, why do we want to study all these Jiva Swarupam and Ishvara Swarupam? When I have my daily problems, why do I need to study who am I, who is Lord, what is Jagata? How is that helping in getting the bread on my table, or getting the admission in the school, or making sure that my diseases go away and all? At the end of the day, if we boil down, all the goals ultimately are for peace, security, and happiness. Well, if we know that, then what is keeping us away from that? The thing is, we always feel that myself or the things that I have are limited in either time or in space. And once I get those things is when I will become happy. For example, if I take my body itself, it is limited in space. So anything which is outside of my body is not me. So I want those other things to become mine, and only then I would become happy. Similarly, in this body, it is only till, let's say, 100 years of age or whatever is my age. And after that, I am not there. So I want to accumulate everything within that time. And there is always a fear of death and all. The goal is to be happy all the time, not only when we get something or achieve something or get away from some problematic thing. The goal is to be eternally happy, peaceful, and secure. So then what can bring us closer? And why do I say quotes? Because bring, in a way, shows as if it were an action, as if we have to do something to get somewhere. But as we would see, it is not really an action. It is more of a different thing. We'll come to that. But ultimately, what we want is, if we get something which is not bound in time and not bound in space, which is something kind of an eternal and limitless, if we have that thing, then we are always happy. Then we are always feeling secure and peaceful. So in chapter 7 and in the entire Gita, this is the main topic, that what is keeping us away is actually ignorance of our own nature, ignorance of the nature of Lord. And why we are talking about that is, until now, the ignorance is that I am limited, that God is somewhere else that I have to achieve, that there will be other things which will make me complete. I am not complete by myself. All these things Shastra says is just an ignorance of our mind, because we don't really know our real nature. We confuse our real nature to be something else than what it is. So that is the ignorance. And so the only solution to remove the ignorance can be knowledge. So that is what the knowledge that we need to study. So again, let's just revise from chapter 1 to 6 a little bit in detail. Is Jiva Swarupam. So now I want to understand what is my essential nature when I'm saying that we are looking at it incorrectly, which is causing all the problem. Okay, then what is the right nature? What is the right way of looking at it? Which is what is discussed from chapter 1 to 6. So Jiva, myself, this individual self, is not really this body. It's not even these senses or this mind. Many times we relate ourselves as I am this body or I am this mind. But that is not the right thing. This is just a container for the contained. That contained is who I am. That is what has been discussed in chapter 2 and all the other chapters in the Prathama Shatkam. And also another thing that we always think of is like, okay, if I'm not the body, sense or mind, I am the doer of something, or I'm the enjoyer of those actions, results. But in the Prathama Shatkam, again, we saw that we are neither the doer nor the enjoyer. We are something beyond that. We are just a Sakshi. So we looked at the Jiva Swarupam there. And there was also talked about a sadhana, which we must do, which is Karma Yoga, which was called as proper action and proper attitude. And it is, Karma Yoga is at the level of physical level. We will now see in the Madhyama Shatkam that there is another level of sadhana. And the importance of Purusha Prayatna is mentioned. Many times people would think that, okay, it's all fate, it's all fatalistic, there is nothing that I can do, what is going to happen is going to happen anyway. But that is not the case. In the first Shatakam, there is a lot of importance given to free will. Even Karmanyeva Vadikaraste. They're talking about that you have full right on what you can do. You can change the course of action. You can change the course of results by your actions. So we have to work towards all our Purusharthas. There is nothing that can happen without us doing anything. So we are the major contributor towards whatever results are going to come. We are not the deciders, however, but we are still the major contributor. And this we have to do with Ishvara Arpana Bhava, in which I am giving my 100%. And then later on, we'll see how we will get the results. There is not only one parameter that decides that, and that we'll see in the next slide. Now, from this Shatakam onwards, from 7th to 12th chapter, we have seen what is my nature. Okay, I have understood this is what my nature is. Then what about God? Because that's how we have always learned that that's how I would get moksha. And moksha is nothing but eternal peace, security, and happiness. So what is the nature of this Lord? And are we different? Are we same? How do I achieve that? So unless I know what is the nature of my goal, what is the definition of my goal, how would I be able to achieve that? So now we are discussing about Ishvara Swarupam. But what we will see in a summary is that it is nothing different. It is just a micro and a macro, like a drop and an ocean. A drop's nature is also of water, and the ocean's nature is also that of water. But in 7th chapter, we would also see, as we saw there, Anatma versus Atma, the body versus the container versus the contained. Here we'll also see the saguṇa versus the nirguṇa, Ishvara Swarupam. So those things will be discussed. And here also there is a sadhana called Upasana Yoga. Here we are trying to train our mind. There it was at a physical level. Now this is at a subtler level, at the mind level, how we are training our mind and concentration. And the importance of Ishvara Anugraha is discussed. So there we saw one of the engines of a train which is trying to climb uphill through all the problems of the world. It was a self-effort that is trying to pull the train from the front, that engine. But there is another engine behind the train which is trying to push it. And that is the grace of the Lord. And this helps us become very humble when we achieve something. We don't get to think that, oh, I have done this and that, because obviously, like a bowler is bowling, then it doesn't mean that the wicket is taken by him only. It depends upon the pitch, it depends upon the wind, it depends upon how the player is playing, whether somebody is getting a catch or not. There are n number of things in play, but obviously there is an importance for the self effort, but then there are other parameters also. So we could call all those other parameters combined as Ishvara Anugraha. And that helps us also accept some things which we don't desire. That gives us acceptance also. So we accept all that as prasad. So these are the two things that we have seen in the Prathama Shatkam. I'm trying to understand myself as something which is not incomplete by itself. The Lord also is having pretty much the same qualities. And then later on, we'll see that I and the Lord are not different, but that is in the Charama Shatkam. Now, getting into the verse proper, in the very first verse, Lord talks about that he is doing a big advertisement. He is making big claims. And as we can see, this whole chapter is even started by him only. Otherwise, many times Arjuna is asking a question, but here Bhagavan himself says, Maya saktamana partha yogam yunjanam adashrayah asamshayam samagram mam yatha jnasyasi tachrunu. He's saying, you want to know me? I will tell you myself. Incompleteness. When he says me, he means Ishvara. I will tell you completely. And what does it mean by completely? Because later on he's going to discuss that there are two aspects. One is the higher aspect and one is the lower aspect, which sir also mentioned, that there is a apara prakriti and there is a para prakriti. So he's going to tell in complete detail, asamshayam, and you will not have left any doubt whatsoever. He's going to tell you in that detail, in that completeness, no doubt at all. But then there is a condition. This can only happen provided you have that desire to know me. Like in that 4 conditions that we always talk about, there is a mumukshu. You need to have that desire to know me. What is that final destination? Okay, I am going from here in a train to somewhere. Sure, I can have tea and pakoras on the way, and I can always discuss about which tea, which pakoda is best or which chips is best. But at the back of the mind, I need to know that I need to reach, let's say, a Chennai or Bangalore or wherever. So as long as we know that, then we can figure out all the other things in our life, how to get to school or how to get a good job and all. But we need to know what is that final destination. So as long as we have that desire to know, this condition is checked off. Then the next thing is yogam yunjan. A proper sadhana has to be done. I have to apply my self-effort. I should be willing to do that. And not just any effort, it has to be a relevant sadhana. For example, if I just do meditation, it doesn't mean that my hunger is going to go away. So similarly, karma yoga has its own place, upasana yoga has its own place. So you have to do different things which are prescribed for different type of activities. So we have to do relevant sadhana, we have to put in our effort. And at the same time, madashraya. So to say you have to surrender to me, which means again, you have to accept that there is a grace of Lord. That is what is going to help. So as long as you have these 3 conditions, you go through these teachings of mine, you will understand my nature completely. And again, coming back to the original point, once I know the nature, then I would be knowing that, okay, I am also not bound in time and space, like the Lord is not bound in time and space. Ultimately, everything is getting into that same funnel where we want to know our nature, Lord's nature, and then at the end, we would say that we are all the same. And so we are not limited in time and space. So we are always, so it's a change in the shift in the attitude mainly, and no real action or no real movement is necessary there. Then in the second verse, he again says the same thing, that Jnātavyam avashishyate. Completely you will know. There will be nothing left to know more than that. Vaksham asheshataha. I will teach you in a way that nothing will be left. And what will I tell you? I will tell you about Jñānam and vijñānam. Jñānam means saguṇa īśvara, in which I say that Lord has a form, like how we have always, as sir was mentioning, that initially our teddy bear was having a form. Like our Lord has Rama, Krishna, they have attributes, they have certain activities, they have a time of birth, they have a time of departure, they have certain set of activities that they do. But we all know that God is not limited to time and space. He or she is everywhere. So there is no gender also involved, there is no time also involved, but this is something that we want to use as a stepping stone in our journey of knowledge. So that is the saguṇa form of Ishvara, and it is called technically Jñānam, in which I am the devotee and then there is a God. There is a distance there, there is a difference there, there is a Bheda Jñānam, it is that. And then the next form, the higher form, is called nirguṇa Jñānam, and the technical term used here for that is vijñānam. Now, I and Lord are not separate. I know that that was just a form, and now I get into the essential nature. What is the essence of it? And that becomes the Advaita knowledge. So that both of them will be taught in this entire chapter. That is the saguṇa Jñānam and nirguṇa Jñānam, called as Jñānam and vijñānam. Now the greatness about this knowledge is that once you know this, again a big claim, there would remain nothing more to be known. We have seen in Upanishads also, Mundaka Upanishad, that where it was claimed that this knowledge is something knowing which nothing else remains to be known. Now, it doesn't mean that I would know that, okay, what is the 92nd periodic table element. That is not the point of it. The point of it is that I would have answered all type of queries that I have in my life. So what are generally the questions that humans have? At the physical level, or at the emotional level, or at the intellectual level? These are pretty much the three levels. At the physical level, I'm worried about my body. How do I keep it healthy? What will happen if I die? How do I deal with the old age and things like that? At the emotional level, why don't people call me? Why don't they take care of me? How should I talk to somebody? And all those things in which I need emotional help to feel myself complete. Again, all questions are again revolving around feeling myself complete. And at the intellectual level, we have questions like, who am I? What is my nature? What is the purpose of all this knowledge? How do I get moksha? What is that bondage? How do I get liberation? All these questions will get answered once we go through the topics of the Prathama, Madhyama and Charama Shatkam. I know myself, I know the Lord, I know both are the same. We are all limitless and timeless. We are all eternal, and there is no really problem. Again, it's not just wishing, washing, or throwing all the problems under the carpet, but it is actually understanding that I'm not this body. This body will have all the body type problems. I'm not this mind. So it will have, only the mind will have these problems, but that is not who I am. These are the tools that I use. So if a problem of my specs is not my problem, I will still deal with that problem, but I will now know that, okay, this specs, this teddy bear is not who I am. They are different. So once we know that, then those problems would automatically, we would mature into getting rid of those problems. Now, what is the glory of this knowledge? What happens, and is it really a great knowledge? Again, another advertisement here from Lord Krishna. He says, this knowledge is so precious. It is so rare than anything else in the world. What is the greatness of gold or diamond? Sure, they have their own physical properties, which any metal or any rock also has. But they are called rare elements because they are very extremely rare. And that's why they are very, very important, very, very precious. And this knowledge here, Krishna tries to say, is extremely rare. And why it is rare? Because nobody actually is pursuing it. Nobody has the time or desire to get that. Everybody is busy in their own lives doing a number of actions or tasks to achieve material pursuits. But it is rare because nobody does that. But out of thousands of people or huge number of people, there are a few who have that desire, who want to spend that amount of time. But then they don't know how to do that. They don't really know what are the means for that. And what are these really means? That, okay, the first, as we saw, to remove the ignorance, you need to have knowledge. Now, for knowledge, you would have to find a guru. So again, as each step goes on, again, we can apply the same equation that, okay, from thousands of people who know that the means is Jñānam, then only one would find guru. Out of the thousands of people who would find a guru, they would have to know that, okay, Upadesha or the Shastra Vichar has to be done in order to gain that moksha or that Jñānam. So every stage, so many peoples would get out of the whole funnel. So it becomes very, very rare for whoever are the people who have this desire, who know how to get it, who are doing Shastra Vichar, and we are amongst those lucky people. So we should congratulate ourselves for that. And then the third thing is Yatati. we have to put the right effort also for that. It is not that it will just happen. Again, as we saw previously also, again and again, the free will and self-efforts importance keeps coming into the play, that we have to really make an effort to get there. It is not that, okay, maybe in 50th of my Janma, it will automatically happen. It will never happen by itself. We have to really do that vichara. We have to really do all the previous sadhanas to actually make our mind mature, to get to a stage where we can actually understand the Jnanam. Understanding the Jnanam would be a split-second event, but we need to ensure that our soil is fertile for that seed to actually grow. And then fourth point here that it mentions is that what is that we are trying to siddha again? And because we need to see like what is the goal. Krishna says that the goal is again inner peace and security we would get. This is an extremely rare knowledge. If we apply our self-effort, we will get it. So there is a bright light at the end of the tunnel. So with this, today's chapter 7 analysis, we would end, but in the next DISHA session, we would see how it progresses and how do we get to know more about the para prakriti and apara prakriti, which are the main topics for 7th chapter. Now, another thing that we want to discuss today are what is creation or manifestation, and what is the difference between Maya and Brahman and a few other aspects of Maya as discussed in Tattva Bodha and in our introduction classes to Vedanta. See, these are mainly terms which help us understand many of the scriptural texts. So it is good to understand what do they individually mean, and then as for any other study, once we understand the terms, then the study becomes easier. So this is mainly understanding of those things. Now, what is creation? Don't we always have this question that, okay, last year this had happened, 100 years ago this had happened, maybe 1,000 years ago this had happened. We are very interested in history. And that's how we are also very interested in the history of the entire creation, if you will. But creation is actually a misnomer, because according to Satkaryavad or law of conservation of matter and energy, nothing can really be created. Like out of thin air, nothing can really come out. So it's not that before the creation, again, before is with emphasis, there was nothing there and then something just came out of nothing. So misnomer creation is actually just a misnomer. What is the right term is manifestation. So there, it is like a changing in form. For example, if you see in the picture, there is a gold bar. Now, have we really created these bangles? Language limitation is there. So we can say that, yes, we've created these bangles. But first of all, there is no thing, no real thing as bangle. The real thing is actually gold only, which was already there. So what have we really created? We have created nothing. We have just changed its form, or the bangles have manifested out of the gold. Were the bangles never there and they just came out of thin air? Well, the bangles were there in potential form in those gold bars. And whatever has been created in this way in a form will be subject to one day into collapse also. So, these get melted also and then again go into gold, and this kind of, there is a cycle. So what is unmanifest means, for example, in the gold bar, these bangles were unmanifest because we could not have seen or touched them. We could not have transacted, and I cannot sell it to somebody, or I cannot really wear it. I can't really do anything because they're not there. They're not created. So that manifestation is what actually is creation. And so similarly in this whole world also, whatever we see, those mountains, trees, houses, etc., these are nothing but manifestation only. We are just changing the form. These buildings, when we say we have created, there's nothing like a building per se. There are like stones and bricks and all the cement, which is already out there in some form. We've changed its form to make it this way. And they also had some other thing by which they have been formed. So ultimately, how we are, and that's what scientists are also trying to do, like find out what is the basic building material of everything. And that's what they call as theory of everything. They want to find out whether everything is coming out of a particle or a wave or an energy form. They want to understand quantum mechanics and all those things. Ultimately, the whole thing is to understand what is everything made out of. And we are only looking at pretty much the material aspect of those things, and when we have those scientific discussions. So in our Shastra, we call that term as Maya, which is the causal form of matter in which everything is in its potential form, out of which everything manifests. So in our previous example, those gold bars are, for example, that causal form of that matter, or that bar we would call as Maya. And in there, nothing is differentiated. There is nothing like a bangle or a necklace or a ring there. Everything is pretty much this, like, there is only one thing there, which we call as Maya. Again, this is because we have to understand these things. We have to make use of language, and we have to understand these aspects. That's why we are giving them names. But here it's the potential, the potentiality out of which these manifestation of world happens. Now, before any creation per se, before anything that we can perceive or transact with, Maya existed. Basically, everything existed in its potential form, in its unmanifest form. That unmanifest form is called Maya. Again, as we said, these are the terms that we are trying to understand. Now, what's the difference between Maya and Brahman? So before we get into that, what is Brahman and what is Atma? Why there are two names for that? First of all, that consciousness principle, which is a non-material principle, that sentiency in us that we see, that is called Brahman or Atma. And Brahman and Atma are nothing but just calling them from two different point of view. Atma is from individual level, and Brahman it as a macro level. So micro versus macro is just a standpoint, but they're pretty much the same thing, that consciousness or sentiency in us is called Brahman. Now, we have seen that Brahman also is beginningless from other texts, and it is also eternal. It always lasts, and Maya also does that. So these two, that is the similarity between the two. And these are the two things that must be there in the very quote unquote beginning, because both are beginningless. So Brahman also has to be there, Maya also has to be there. So once we understand these two, we can understand the entire cosmos. So we need to know both of these. Now, what are the differences between these two? The Brahman is non-material consciousness, as we saw, and this is the material principle, the Maya. Brahman, because is away from time and space, nothing can really change in it. So there is no first of all, there is nothing in the space, so you really cannot have any attributes in space, or you cannot have any attributes in time. But Maya is with attributes. It's that saguṇa. And because you don't have any attributes, then what will change? Nothing can change. So nothing can change in time and space for Brahman and in Maya, but it's never the same. Maya is the one that multiplies, it becomes into multifold. If you have seen that Dakshinamurti Stotram also, like Bijasya Antaram Kuro, like it is the Bija form, it is that initial form out of which everything becomes. And it's like that Vijrambyati, like everything is so mesmerizing. It's all coming out of this Maya only. So Brahman is that constant Sakshi principle or the knowing principle, and Maya is all that we see, and it is never the same. It's always changing. Even when we see this body as same, it's not same. It's always changing. Everything is always changing. It's because it's coming out from Maya. Now, these are some technical things, that what are the stages of manifestation. Again, we said that everything starts from Maya, which is the causal state, which is the potential state, unmanifest state. Out of them, what appears first is the sukshma prapancha, the subtle matter. And then once that subtle matter, then the next thing that comes out of that subtle matter is the gross matter, which is sthula prapancha. Now, abhivyakti means again manifestation. Nothing is getting created. It is just changing its form or its manifestation. And in our example, we can say like gross matter is like our body and subtle matter is like our mind. Mind is also matter only. It's not really the sentiency. There is something else which is providing it the sentiency. Now, Maya is beginningless, but all these subtle matter, gross matter, these things have beginning. So our Srishti, that has a beginning and an end. Whatever has a beginning will ultimately get collapsed. So that has a beginning and an end. Maya does not have any beginning. So obviously it does not have any end also. So, and this whole process of changing from Sukshma to Sthula, all these Pancha Mahabhutas that we have, from Sukshma when they change into gross, that process is called Panchikarana. Now, as we saw again, the cycle of manifestation is that something becomes manifest, then it again becomes unmanifest, then it again becomes manifest, then it again becomes manifest, unmanifest. This whole thing goes on. So as we see here, the avastha bhedaha, natu vastu bhedaha. Vastu is that reality. There is nothing in changing in reality. It's only avastha. It's only changes in the shape and form and things like that. So there are three features of this manifestation. There is a Jnana Shakti, which is the ability to know, to feel, to sense, to experience anything which is happening, that I can actually see something. And then there is a Kriya or a Prana Shakti, out of which all those actions that happen, all the Karmendriyas, that are, again, all these things are happening in the matter. So obviously they must be in Maya. So that's why these are all features of Maya also. So Kriya and Prana Shakti. And then the third is the Dravya Shakti. For example, there is a stone. It cannot feel anything. It cannot do anything, but it is there. So that inertness, it's actually due to the Dravya Shakti. And then Maya, we know, is Trigunatmika. All these three gunas are available in all those Pancha Mahabhutas: Akash, air, fire, water, earth. All of them have Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic properties. So in total, we have exactly 15 of these properties. When we are understanding the creation and manifestation, these are important things to understand, which we'll again see in the more subsequent sessions. So thank you so much. Hari Om.
Thank you, Ullas. That was an absolutely brilliant presentation and very nice introduction to the new Shatkam, the new set of 6 chapters where Shri Krishna is now going to reveal, as he said, from now on. You will see a lot of similarity between the 7th and the 9th chapters. In both these chapters, Krishna is clearly telling himself that I'm going to reveal my higher nature, which is also called the Para Prakriti, which we, as he just explained, using Tattva Bodha as Brahman and Maya, and the lower or the Apara Prakriti. Jñānam or vijñānam, yet jñātva, moksha se ashubhat, that will come in the 9th chapter. So you will see a lot of similarity between these 2 chapters. And then Shri Krishna says, I'm there in the water, I'm there in the air, I'm there in the sun, I'm there in the moon, and so on. So slowly there is a shift from Shri Krishna as a person that we see to the whole world. Next slide, please. So in the next set of chapters, now Ullas went through a lot of technical aspects of Maya, Brahman, and the various gunas, Dravya Shakti, Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti. Sometimes we wonder, is it important to know all these things? Now, when we are looking at something so high as Parama Purushartha, I'm looking for to be a Jivan Mukta. And through the guidance of our teachers and these Shastras, it is a promise that it is just a matter of time. Like we put so much efforts for everything else. Can we put a little greater effort to be through the path of Jnānam, through our own self-study, through our own groups? That is why, although Ullas spoke very quickly and very fast, a sincere student will listen to this more often to be able to understand the nitty-gritty of all that he spoke, so that I will be able to move from Eka Rupa to Aneka Rupa, to be able to see the whole world as God, and then finally to discover if the whole world is God, God should be there in this little body of mine also. Let me be able to discover what is that higher aspect of God in me and the lower aspect of God in me. The higher aspect is that conscious principle because of which I'm so alive. The higher aspect in you is because you are able to listen and to be able to understand the subtle teachings. So that is what is called from Eka Rupa to Aneka Rupa to Arupa. Very quickly, can we go to the next slide? Shri Krishna initially begins by, God as a creator. We have a very beautiful world. So if there is a beautiful creation, there must be a creator, because I don't see him anywhere. I put him somewhere far away beyond the clouds. Bhagavan is there. And this idea is our initial idea, which we entertained for many years as Paroksha Jagat Karta Ishvara, the one who has created this world. Next slide, please. But as we go on and when we ask certain fundamental questions, now, if God has to create this world, with what did God create? In the beginning, there was no creation. There was only God. With what did God create the world? And you will realize God has to create the world out of himself. If I have to create a dream world, I have to create this world out of my thoughts itself. And therefore, everything in this dream world is none other than me. Everything in this so-called real world is none other than Bhagwan. Next one, please. As you will understand, in this little story, once Swami Anubhavananda was asked to see a statue, a clay statue of Ganesha. And when the statue was done, he said, very good, very nice statue, but we always have Ganesha with a mouse. And as the statue was being freshly made with fresh clay, the creator of the Ganesha Murti suddenly realized, oh, I have not done the mouse. So because there was some extra amount of clay around the belly, he took it out and fashioned a little mouse from that. Now, just to illustrate, as we can continue the text version, so initially God alone was there. Where was the raw material? It came from God himself. So this world is none other than formed-īśvara. Now this big jump has gone from paroksha, God that I would see or I'm not able to see. Now I can clearly declare that everything that I see is none other than God, and I have a very special reverence to God. Next, please. I develop a tremendous sense of a divinization. Now God is now divine and God is very reverential, and that is how we touch the ground and say, so I have moved from Ekarupa to Anekarupa. In the Mundakopanishad, we have the spider in the web example, as the web is none other than from the spider itself. Now we take the next big jump that happens from the 7th chapter. Next slide, please. From the 7th chapter itself, this is just to show when we go to reverential places and holy places and we do a parikrama around Kailash, there is a greater sensitivity to everything that the bhumi around. You can prostrate at every point because you feel that reverence in that place. But one declaration that we did when we went to a place like that is, why not treat the bhumi around the ground, that on the ground which I'm staying, just as I would treat it at Kailash, because in a way it is no different. Can I bring that sense of reverence to everything? Next one, please. Now, if everything is God, if I look around, there are a lot of things which I will see is not so godly. There is so much of trash, there is so much of misery, there is so much of unpleasantness in the world around me. Not people whom I say not so good, not so godly. How can I see godliness in and through? And this is the next big jump where I want you to understand two words, what is called immanent and transcendental. Can we go to the next slide, please? Which in this chapter itself, Bhagwan introduces himself as Matta Parataram Nanyat Kinchid Asti Dhananjaya. For me, there is no other creator. I'm self-created. Go back, please. My sarvam idam protam sutre manigana eva. I pervade in and through everything in a fashion which is immanent. At this level, I need to see God in and through every part of myself, every part of the world, as all-pervasive God. And what kind of God? As transcendental. Transcendental means it is there, just like the sun or the light is there on my hand, but the light is not affected by anything on my hand. Why? Because it is not affected. So too, Bhagavan pervades in and through this whole world, but is not affected. The word is asangaha. These two words are important to meditate and reflect, and we will be available for you to clarify your doubts. Because one day when you understand Bhagavan as immanent and transcendental, we jump into a deeper understanding. We will now have a quiz, and the quiz will be conducted by Indumati. Dr. Ashwini and Indumati have prepared for this. And let us see how we have understood this chapter. Over to you, Indumati.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Now, starting with the first question, what is creation? We have 4 options here: Srishti, Drishti, Vrishti, and Samashti. The answer is Srishti. The second question is, what is the form of creation? 4 options are Sukshma Bhuta Srishti, Bija Bhuta Srishti, Dhatu Bhuta Srishti, and Moola Bhuta Srishti. The answer is yes, Sukshma Bhuta Srishti. The third question is, what is Maya? The options are Chaturatmika, Trigunatmika, Ekatmika, and Shatatmika. The answer is Trigunatmika. Blank Shakti is the must to run karmendriyas. They are Atma, Prana, Maya, and Shiva. The answer is yes, Prana. Dash, the process of transforming subtle matter to gross matter is called, there are 4 options again: Panchikarana, Swastīkarana, Shrikarana, Parakarana. The answer is Panchikarana. According to which law or theory the energy can neither be destroyed nor be created? It is Satkarya Vada. What are the 2 pre-existent entities? Name them.
Atma and Maya.
Correct. Atma and Maya. Name the Panchabhutas.
Akash.
Yes.
Vayu, Agni.
Yes.
Jala, and Prithvi.
Correct. Prithvi and Apa. Exactly. What is Stula Srishti or Stula Abhivyakti?
It's the material world which we can see.
Yes. After the 5 gross elements are born, out of that, the entire cosmos, including all our physical bodies, are created. This is called Stula Srishti or Stula Abhivyakti. Next question. We are coming to Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, first 3 verses. Yoga of knowledge and wisdom. What does the Lord explain in this chapter? Self-excellence, supremacy, all-pervasiveness, all the above. Yes.
All pervasiveness, yes, for sure. All of the above?
Yeah, all the above. Define Mahavakya.
It is where you show that you and God are not different from each other.
Yes, yes. It is Upanishadic statements, yes, that indicate the identity between the inner self and Brahman, the supreme reality are called Mahavakyas. What are the 4 important Mahavakyas? Yes, Prajñānam Brahma, that is consciousness is Brahman. Tat Tvam Asi, that thou art. I am Atma Brahma, this Atman is Brahman. Aham Brahma Asmi, I am Brahman. Next question. Differentiate between Jnana and Vijñānam.
So Jnana is knowledge about the world and saguṇa īśvara, from what last explained, and vijñāna is about the nirguṇa Brahman.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Speculative knowledge is Jnana. Actual experience of the self is Vijñāna. Coming to the last question. What is the meaning of knowledge and wisdom?
When you understand it is knowledge, but when you assimilate it and you implement it is wisdom.
Yes, yes. Knowledge means intellectual understanding. True wisdom is the knowledge acquired through intimate experience. Thank you. Hari.
Thank you, Indumati and team, for putting together a very interesting quiz. Our profound thanks to Dr. Timmappa Hegde sir for his constant guidance in helping us understand our scriptures in such a clear manner. Ullas, please accept our appreciation and gratitude for a wonderful explanation of intense topics. Special thanks to Pannaga for the shloka along with its meaning. Team Param Vedanta thanks each one of you for your keen participation, which makes this journey a very pleasant one. Our next session on Friday, the 14th of October, is a special session on the importance and significance of Om, the first of a 2-session series. In the first session, various verses about Om from different Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita will be explained. In the second session, the mantras about Om from Mandukya Upanishad will be covered. We conclude today's session with our usual prayer. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om.